more friendly on a one-to-one basis than sometimes we indicate on television, and quite frankly, we all end up at the same events. And I know that you and Tim Russert have been friends, very good friends, for many years.
Absolutely, and it was tough because on a personal level I liked him so much, and on a professional level he was such a fierce competitor. And let's face it, he had the dominant Sunday morning talk show, but he always dealt with honor. He always dealt with class. You know, I have to say, you talked about the fact that he's been the author of books. This is just so sad because, of course, the big book that he wrote was Big Russ and Me in 2004, big bestseller about his dad. Big Russ, and what an enormous effect he had had on his life. It became a huge bestseller. It spoke to an awful lot of people about relationships between fathers and sons. Tim loved his father, Big Russ, so dearly, just as Tim loved and was loved by his son Luke so dearly. And the idea that this would happen 2 days before Father's Day, and that Big Russ is still alive and is now living through this tragic news that his beloved and enormously successful son, Tim Russert, is gone, it just breaks your heart on a variety of levels.
Well, we don't know any details, and we don't expect to know any for a little while. We do know that he had just been back from the family vacation in Italy, as you mentioned. One of his children had graduated. We know that our understanding was that there was a possibility that some of his family members had been on a plane, and that was the reason that NBC was delaying the initial announcement. I have to tell you, many of our regular viewers probably already know, but our managing editor for news in Washington, Britt Hume, works Sunday through Thursday to be a part of your program, Chris, and he is off today, or I know he would be here sharing what an incredible colleague and wonderful guy he was as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as I say, the only people who had any problems with Tim Russert were people like me who were competitors and didn't like getting beat by him. But on a personal level, he was a totally admirable figure who had enormous credibility across the media community, across the political community. And as I say, when Russert said something, it had an enormous impact, as in a couple of months ago when he said that the race was basically over. I wrote down a couple of other highlights. Obviously the 2000 campaign, the extraordinary Bush-Gore race and his eraser board then, which I believe he ended up giving to the Museum of American History at the Smithsonian here on the National Mall. It became such a kind of relic, a piece of memorabilia of American political history. I remember in 1992, shortly after he had taken over as the host of Meet the Press, he did an interview with Ross Perot when Ross Perot was running as an independent for president, and really carved him up. And that was the beginning of the end of Ross Perot when he did not do so well on Meet the Press with Tim Russert. Interestingly enough, you know, he had a whole career before this as a political operative. He came from Buffalo. He started out, he was a lawyer working for Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan of New York State. He then went on and became a counselor to Governor Mario Cuomo in the mid-'80s, and I'll never forget at the 1984 Democratic Convention in San Francisco when Mario Cuomo delivered just an amazing keynote speech. One of the things that I'll never forget was Tim Russert was standing behind him off camera, but if you were in the hall you could see him just following the teleprompter and following his man Mario Cuomo every step, every word of the way, and willing him through this extraordinary keynote speech. Then he came over to NBC and was an executive, was the executive vice president of NBC. And I remember actually what happened, which was that he used to give debriefs to the then head of NBC, the head of General Electric, Jack Welch, as just an off-air executive. And he would tell him, you know, here's what's going on in the campaign, and this is what's going on behind the scenes. And at one point, Welch turned to the head of the NBC news division and said, hell, this guy tells me better stuff in private than I'm hearing on the air from our reporters. And it was very shortly thereafter that he became the anchor and host of Meet the Press.
Chris, thanks. Stay with us. Newt Gingrich is with us now, the former Speaker of the House, who's been a many times guest on Meet the Press with Tim Russert. Speaker Gingrich, a mighty sad day.
Listen, I think all of us who have had any connection with Tim Russert are stunned and shocked. He was so vital, so intense, so totally committed to life, so much still a product of Buffalo, New York, and so proud of his dad and proud of his grassroots and his background. I think everybody who knew him must just be both very sad and in a state of genuine shock, because he seemed so vibrant, he seemed so totally committed, and he loved what he was doing. He had as deep a commitment to the process of public policy, understanding what was going on, engaging in a healthy, positive way. And on a number of occasions, for example, when Mario Cuomo and I
was just about to bring that up. It was a classic.
Yeah, I was listening to the description earlier about Mario. When Mario Cuomo and I decided we would go to Cooper Union last year and have a conversation and try to change the tone of the presidential campaign, Tim, at no cost, for no honorarium, just came up voluntarily and was the moderator that night. And his presence automatically made it a national kind of event that was on. Got very, very wide coverage. And he did it because, as a citizen, he believed so passionately and so deeply in this process of dialogue. And as Chris pointed out, he was a very tough guy. I mean, if you weren't totally prepared, I always used to tell people that if you were going to deal with Russert, you had better be at full speed and totally prepared, or he would never give you an inch. And the Ross Perot example that Chris was referring to is a perfect example. That somebody who couldn't quite figure out how to cope with him would be driven off the show psychologically, and the whole national audience would see it. And it wasn't because Russert was mean. It was because he felt he had a duty to really push very, very hard and to really insist that somebody who wanted to be a leader in this country had to be prepared to operate at the highest standards.
And part of the highest standards was going through the Meet the Press door. John Stack is our Vice President of News Gathering and worked for many years in the NBC family, sat next to Tom Brokaw on the set with him night after night, and knew Tim Russert very well. I see it in your face, as I did on Tom Brokaw's today. It's just unbelievable that this has happened. Yeah,
the breath just got right out of me when we heard it. I spoke to folks over at NBC, and as soon as I got to them, their voices, one person in particular was crying. I knew the news was as bad as we thought it would be.
Tell us about him as a manager and one who dealt. We talk about these places where we work as teaching hospitals. To quote Britt Hume, he was an amazing teacher.
Yeah, he would have a disarming charm, and the look and the smile, and he was always looking for some kind of humor in this business of stress. But you knew when you were on his wrong side, and he wouldn't just tear you out. He would inform and teach, and I think that's why he had such loyalty among his staff. It's incredible that I'm speaking about him in the past tense, but every place he was, I remember when he started at NBC, and he had come from the political background here in New York, as people before said about Cuomo and Senator Moynihan. He was a hard-charging New Yorker, even though it was upstate New York. He was proud of the state of New York. He was a true political operative, but he made the transition to journalism very smoothly.
He loved the Buffalo Bills like I love the Ole Miss Rebels, and he always managed to get it in. He and Wolf Blitzer of CNN, two Buffalo guys, and I just wonder the legacy of Tim Russert. I mean, we're just beginning to write it, I'm quite sure, but this is a guy who rose to the highest level now in 3 different worlds.
I think, again, part of that disarming charm was the fact he was definitely a guy you would like to have a beer with without a glass, and talk about politics, talk about football, and I think that was part of his charm, only part of it. He knew his stuff. He studied and studied, and what he wasn't good at in broadcasting, he made damn well sure he got good at it and developed that inevitable style at Meet the Press for 20 years.
People feared coming on his program, didn't they?
Yeah, and I think they did, but they knew they had to go through that in order to have success. Tim was tough, but he wasn't unfair. And one of the things that just briefly I'd like to mention, in this world of, and this era of email, I stayed in touch with him with about 2 or 3 emails a year. And the common ground we had in recent years was both our sons went to Boston College. And it's my understanding that they had just finished a trip to Italy celebrating